Hi, this is Crypto Ice. Today I want to talk about why cryptocurrency exists. What is the value proposition that it offers the world? Okay, so to do that, let's start back in 2008. The crash of 2008 was the point where the United States of America and the US dollar were exposed. The system, the economy, the way that it's based upon debt was exposed, right? And so now it's not surprising that after this crash in 2008, the central banks printed trillions of dollars to bail out the economy, really just kicked it down the road. They didn't solve the problem, they just kicked it further down. But Bitcoin was created and came out in 2009. It was the first white paper by an anonymous person called Satoshi Nakamoto. I believe that Satoshi's probably an anonymous group of high-level government or high-level people in the world that saw this issue that was exposed for the world when the crash happened. We saw how fragile the U.S. economy was, and to be the world reserve currency with the US dollar, there was probably a group that decided to put an alternate form of money in place. And so from 2009 to 2020, Bitcoin's been building in its momentum. I don't personally hold Bitcoin, but I do pay credit to what Bitcoin did to get us to the point that we are now. It was revolutionary technology, even if it is old and slow and, technology like XRP, in my opinion, is like 100 times better. But that's beside the point. Bitcoin did its thing to get us from where we were in the beginning to here, so I respect that. So let me just explain what is the value of Bitcoin? What does it have to offer? Well, in 2008, we saw the same thing we're seeing now when the central banks want to print more money, our dollar value just goes down. It's the same thing with the banking system. It's the way it was set up by the Federal Reserve in 1913. Inflation targets every year. Money becomes 3% inflation every year, every 20 years. The price doubles. So like I mentioned previously, Cryptopolis, he mentioned how a 1960s house cost you like $10,000, and today that same house would cost you like 300 grand. Okay, so that's a problem, right? That's the way the system's built, that it just, your value of the dollar just goes less and less and less and less. No fiat currency has ever survived. And even though I don't believe that our paper money, the US dollar, is going away anytime soon, I do believe that potential exists, that it just becomes so worthless at some point. Hyperinflation, right? So, how does Bitcoin counteract that? Well, first of all, there's a fixed supply, right? 21 million coins that's fixed. There's going to be no more. And about 18.3 million of that 21 million is in circulation, right? The other 2.6, don't quote me on that, there's about 2.6 left to be released over time. And how it works is Bitcoin and the blockchain is basically a collection of computers or nodes around the world. And so there's like 10,000 plus computers or nodes all around the world. They all have the Bitcoin code downloaded on them. They have the entire history of transactions of Bitcoin. So what does that do? That offers a level of transparency that we do not have now, right? Right now, if the central banks want to print more money and devalue the dollar, boom, they're right there. With this, if somebody wants to make a transaction that's nefarious or whatnot, the other 10,000 plus computers will deny the transaction. So there's, safety in numbers, so to speak, with that. So they call it decentralized for that reason, because there's no one central authority that's controlling everything. It's more of a group consensus, right? So I don't know how, if you're kind of new to the space, I just want to break it down as simply as possible. So the other part is that there's these blocks of transactions, right? So Satoshi said, 1 megabyte equals 1 block or something. And so many transactions get put into a block, and all these nodes or computers have to verify these transactions, right? So let's say I had a personal computer at home, and I decided I wanted to download the Bitcoin code and have it try to mine Bitcoin. So instead of like a miner trying to dig for gold physically, this is like your computer mining for Bitcoin rewards. And there's two things. So you have to verify the transactions, and that part's pretty, easier. The second part is just luck, really. I mean, you're competing with all these other 10,000 plus computers to be the first one to solve the equation. It's called like a hash. It's like a 68-digit code, and whoever solves the equation first gets the rewards. And so the miner rewards back in 2009 was like 50 Bitcoin. And then there's like what's called Bitcoin halvings, where in 2012 they cut it in half to like 25 Bitcoin was your miner's reward. And then 2016 they cut it in half again. And even just in May of 2020 it was cut in half again to 6.25 Bitcoin in rewards. So why does that matter? Because it's the exact opposite of inflation. It's the exact opposite of the system that we have now that is flawed, where we lose our money as time passes, right? Bitcoin becomes more valuable with each halving because there's less circulating supply, and where there's less supply and more demand, the price and value goes up, right? So I hope you get that concept of that's the value proposition of why you want to hold your money in, say, something like Bitcoin or XRP, in my opinion, because it's a store of wealth, right? Because the idea is that it's gonna grow over time, and inflation is not gonna happen with that. So there you go. There's one big use case, idea of why crypto exists in the world and why we need it. Henry Ford made a quote once. He said, "It is well enough that people of the nation do not understand our banking and monetary system. For if they did, I believe there would be a revolution before tomorrow morning." So what do you think he was alluding to? I believe that what he was really saying was the inflation of the dollar. If people realize that every time they put money in a bank, every time they get a home loan, every time they get a car loan, every time they purchase money on their credit card, there is printed money created out of thin air, and there's more money in circulation. So our economy is just built off of debt. Anytime you put money in a bank, the fractional reserve system, banking system, if you don't understand that, let's say I put in $1,000 into my bank, they have what's called loan to deposit ratios. And a lot of banks are at currently they're like at 100% because there's no reserve requirements in this since this COVID has happened. So anyway, so they can loan out all of your money that you put in the bank, and then that bank will loan it out to another bank, and that bank will loan it out to someone else. You see what I'm saying? Your money started out with $1,000, and it turns into like this inflated money being created out of thin air. But who pays for that? We pay for that because our money becomes less and less valuable the more things are printed. So you can just see that it's built into the system. It's a weakness of the system. It needs to be changed, and that's the crypto movement, really. That's a big part of it. So now that we understand that, just a couple more points on this. That if someone comes to you and says, well, what is the value of cryptocurrency? Why does it matter? Why can't I just keep the system that we have now? Because, well, it's really about retaining value, okay? And what we have now is not retaining value. Like I've said before, I've kept my money in a bank for 10 years and watched it lose its value. I was not learning. Once I had that epiphany of how this monetary system works, I did a complete 180, and I'm to the point where I keep very limited amounts of cash in the bank. And I'm getting my cash into hard assets like crypto that are going to retain its value. So I hope that this was informative in the way of learning a little bit about how Bitcoin and the crypto space came to be. And please feel free to leave some comments if you have questions or thoughts, especially people that are new and are not quite sure how this all works. So thank you, and we'll talk to you later.